It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Starmer's revenge. 4 Labour MPs are suspended for rebelling against the government's planned welfare cuts. Israel strikes targets in Damascus, warning it will not allow a massacre of Syria's Druze community. At least 20 people are reported dead in a crush among people trying to access aid in Gaza. The Prime Minister takes aim at the Tories as the Afghan data breach scandal deepens.
Every day, every single minute, my family is waiting for their deaths.
Plus, how the UK's flagship counter-terror scheme missed chances to stop the Southport killer. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. We start the programme with breaking news, and a tsunami warning has just been issued after a 7.2 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Alaska. The quake was reported to be at a depth of 20 kilometres, that is just over 12 miles. Well, the US tsunami warning system issued the tsunami warning for portions of Alaska following that earthquake. We'll certainly bring you more as we get it. But let's bring you the rest of the top stories now. And after being forced into a series of damaging U-turns by his own MPs, Sir Keir Starmer today demonstrated the price of rebellion to his backbenchers. 4 Labour MPs have been suspended from the party. All of them had joined the revolt against the government's planned welfare cuts. 3 others, who also voted against the government, were removed as trade envoys. Well, as MPs prepare to break for the summer, the Prime Minister has sought to reassert his authority and remind them who's in charge, as our chief political correspondent, John Craig, reports.
Sir Keir Starmer leaving number 10 for the Commons. This time not just for a clash with Kemi Badenoch, but also a crackdown on Labour rebels. 4 Labour MPs, Neil Duncan-Jordan, Brian Leishman, Chris Hinchliffe and Rachel Maskell, were suspended for repeated breaches of discipline. Rachel Maskell, a leading opponent of welfare cuts, was close to tears as she left the Chief Whip's office. She said she wasn't angry, but upset.
I don't see myself as a rebel, but somebody that is prepared to fulfil my role here of holding the executive to account and speaking truth to power. And I'm somebody that is a bridge builder in life and really reaches in to a situation. And I hold my hand out to the Prime Minister and hope he takes that and wants to reach back.
Brian Leishman said he wasn't expecting to be suspended.
We don't really have that personal relationship. Now, I appreciate he is the most important politician in the country, but international issues, domestic issues, but you've also got to make sure that everything at home is right. And I think it's quite clear that it's not.
The retribution handed out in the Chief Whip's office came as the Prime Minister attempted to send a message to his MPs about the need for discipline as they prepare to leave Westminster for the summer recess early next week. But earlier in the Commons, the Tory leader accused the PM of weakness.
My party knows that there is an alternative to tax rises. It's cutting spending, something that they are too scared or perhaps too weak to do. We offered to work with him to reform welfare and make meaningful savings, but his refusal sent a signal.
They left the most incredible mess in the economy, and now they think that they can lecture others.
The PM will be hoping his lecture to the rebels will restore discipline over the summer. But there's a risk it could provoke further dissent.
Well, John joins us live from Downing Street. Emotions certainly running high then. John, the restoration of authority the hard way. Any talk of a further split with the left of the party from this?
Well, some are already talking about a leadership challenge to Keir Starmer as a result of this. Now, one of the rebels, speaking privately to Sky News, has said that when you have to use this much force against your own people, surely you've lost the argument. Now, the rebels are claiming that the timing is odd and that Mr. Starmer has blundered by putting the welfare rebellion debacle, as they call it, back on top of the news again. Constant drama. Could be a final attempt to scare MPs before the inevitable leadership challenge. Now, it's only a few weeks, the anniversary of first anniversary of Sir Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister. He was asked in an interview, "Are you hard enough?" And he said, "Yes, I'm hard enough." So this is an attempt to show that he's a hard disciplinarian. But it's odd because there's only 4 when there were 47 rebels. Why have these 4 been chosen? Well, obviously they're seen as ringleaders, organisers, plotters. There's a lot of sympathy for Rachel Maskell amongst mainstream Labour MPs. They think she's been treated very harshly. Less sympathy for the other 3 who were all only elected last year. One loyalist said to me, well, they're one-term wonders, they'll be out next time. If he was intending to sort of quell the dissent, it seems already as though it may well have backfired. Just to mention about those 3 who've lost their jobs as trade envoys, some would claim that they're pretty non-jobs anyway, sops to people who weren't made ministers. They're Rosena Alan Khan, Bel Rabiro Abbey and Mohammed Yassin. I saw Rosena Alan Khan tonight. She didn't look too distraught, I have to say. The one who's taken it badly is Rachel Maskell, very emotional when she came out of Sir Alan Campbell, the Chief Whip's office, close to tears, fighting back tears, talked about her religious faith and why she came into politics. And she said, I'm never going to give up this fight. She said that, she said, I'm angry. I'm not angry, I'm upset. She said she's going to fight for her constituents. She said that fighting for people who really matter, the poorest people in the country, that's why the Labour Party was created. She didn't sound particularly rebellious in that interview, but she really is pretty sorrowful tonight. She hopes to get the Labour whip back. But the hard left of Labour MPs, they're piling in behind the rebels and expressing their support and solidarity for them. So if Sir Keir really wanted to calm things down, just as MPs are prepared to leave for their constituencies early next week, probably, some cases later this week, then that doesn't seem to have worked. He seems to have really inflamed the row with rebel MPs who are already talking a rebellion, more rebellion over various issues, and even some are even talking about a leadership to Sir Keir challenge to Sir Keir Starmer at some point.
John, live for us there. Thank you very much indeed. Israel has carried out a series of airstrikes on the Syrian capital Damascus, including on the country's military headquarters. Israel says it is preventing a massacre and will protect Syria's Druze minority, which also forms a substantial community in Israel. Israel's attacks came after days of clashes between Syrian troops and Druze armed groups. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports.
Mid-afternoon in Damascus. Its most famous square violated and bombarded by Israeli air power. The moment again, as live news cameras roll. A few weeks ago, Tehran, now Damascus. Months after liberation from decades of tyranny, Syrians now have this to worry about. Israeli airstrikes in the heart of their capital. As a way of showing who's the region's biggest military power, it is hard to beat. But the massive escalation is awkward for Israel's allies. President Trump has said Syria's new government should be given a chance. Now it's under attack, and his diplomats are struggling to keep up.
These are historic, long-time rivalries between different groups in the south-west of Syria, Bedouins, the Druze community, and it led to an unfortunate situation and a misunderstanding, it looks like, between the Israeli side and the Syrian side. So we've been engaged with them all morning long and all night long with both sides, and we think we're on our way towards a real de-escalation.
Misunderstanding is an understatement. Tensions in southern Syria erupted in recent days. Its Druze minority clashing with Bedouin and Syrian government forces, dispatched to restore calm, but accused of carrying out atrocities. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists his forces are acting to protect the Druze.
The IDF is working. The Air Force is working. Other forces are working. We are working to save our Druze brothers and to eliminate the regime's gangs. And now I have one request from you. You are citizens of Israel. Do not cross the border.
But critics say this is more about Israel creating a buffer zone and seizing a chunk of territory. Israel has moved forces from the Golan Heights, Syrian territory it's occupied since the 60s, into Syria proper. And it is now having trouble controlling that border. Druze are fleeing across from Syria, but also from Israel into Syria to help defend their own.
I have especially a big family there, that they suffer a lot there. They have been killed, and it's hard for us to stand here, not doing anything.
Since the fall of the Assad regime, southern Syria has been a powder keg of rivaling factions. It's now erupted into open conflict that in just the last few days has claimed hundreds of lives. If diplomacy fails to secure a ceasefire and Israel fails to control its border, there's the potential for this to become much worse. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
At least 20 people are reported to have died at an aid distribution site in Gaza. The Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says there was a crush sparked by agitators. Hamas claims Israel's military fired tear gas near the site in Khan Yunis. A warning that this report from Sky's Lisa Holland in Jerusalem does contain images you may find distressing.
We've blurred his face, but the family of this boy killed in southern Gaza trying to get food say he was just 13 years old. At the Nasser hospital, a truck pulls up. They're hoping to save the lives of some of those caught up in the crush at a nearby aid distribution centre where people had gone in desperate need of something to eat.
My children haven't eaten for 4 days. I have 3 children. I went to get flour for my children. Why are we being killed so we can feed our children? I went there. It was terrible.
Row after row of people who didn't make it. Gaza's health ministry claims people died of suffocation when pepper spray was used and shots were fired at the crowd.
They kept us in one place and they used pepper spray against us. It's burned our eyes. People were choking and pushing each other. People were suffocating. It wasn't Israelis. It was the American doing this. We went there because we need food. We want to live. We have nothing left. That's why we went there.
The Israeli and American-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which runs the aid sites, gave a different version of events. In a statement, it said, the incident and consequential fatalities were the result of a surge instigated by armed Hamas agitators who infiltrated the crowd. At no point was tear gas deployed, nor were shots fired into the crowd. Limited use of pepper spray was deployed only to safeguard additional loss of life. But just this week, the GHF, facing intense criticism over its management of aid, introduced a new red and green flag system designed to inform Gazans when they should turn up. A video from the past few days at another aid site nearby shows what appears to be shots pinging off the sand as people crowd together waiting for food. The UN says more than 800 people have died since the GHF began running aid distribution in Gaza in May. Which means the grief continues in the absence of any resolution of ceasefire talks. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Jerusalem.
The Prime Minister says the Conservatives have serious questions to answer over a government cover-up of a huge data breach relating to Afghans who supported British forces. Personal details of almost 19,000 Afghans were mistakenly released more than 3 years ago, but the then Tory government used a super injunction to keep the incident and its consequences under wraps until now. A former interpreter for the British Army in Afghanistan has told Sky News that the leak has left his family in fear of being killed by the Taliban. Here's Adele Robinson with more.
I was working as an interpreter with the British Army in Afghanistan. Interpreter was on the first target for the Taliban, and the Taliban call us the British eyes.
Brought to the UK for his protection, Ali, not his real name, thought his family was safe until his data was leaked.
I have carried a dead body of the British soldier. I feel betrayed by the British government.
He believes his father was killed because of it.
My father has been died because of the Taliban take him to the custody and beat him. That's why he died.
Ali's relatives are now hiding in Afghanistan, fearing for their lives.
Every day, every single minute, my family is waiting for their deaths because if anyone comes to knock the door, they think that is the Taliban.
He's among thousands of Afghans who helped the British military, whose names we now know were exposed 3 years ago. After his siblings were arrested, Ali raised concerns to the Ministry of Defence over his data in this email last year. "I am terrified," he said, "and I beg you do not pass this information to anyone."
They say nothing. They just ignore what I told him, and they never reply me back to this email.
Then, on Tuesday, the day a super injunction was lifted by the High Court, this confirmation his data had been leaked. The Ministry of Defence is yet to respond to Sky News, while the Prime Minister insists there will be scrutiny.
The Defence Secretary set out the full extent of the failings that we inherited. A major data breach, a super injunction, a secret route that has already cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Ministers who served under the party opposite have serious questions to answer about how this was ever allowed to happen.
With thousands more Afghans being brought to the UK as a result of the breach, there's concern over whether it will create tension in communities like Bracknell, where hundreds arrived at this hotel earlier this year.
These are people who risk their lives for British values. And what's more, those who have been supported on this scheme are given support to integrate into life in the UK. So, look, I do understand why people raise legitimate questions. That's right and proper that they do that. And it's important that we answer those questions transparently. And that's why it's so important that we've got clarity on this secret Tory scheme.
Clarity, but a government secret it's feared that may erode public confidence. Ali's tried and failed, meanwhile, to get his family to the UK. And if legal action doesn't work, he says he'll go back to Afghanistan and give himself up. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
The government's flagship anti-terrorism scheme, known as PREVENT, has been accused of missing opportunities to stop the Southport murders and the killing of MP Sir David Amess. An independent review found that chances to engage with the attackers at an early stage had been missed. It also concluded that PREVENT needs to rapidly adapt to be better able to spot radicalisation online. Our social affairs correspondent Becky Johnson reports.
PREVENT failed and people died. 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport last summer. Their murderer, free to travel to a dance class to kill them, had been referred to the government's counter-terror programme 3 times. On each occasion, despite his obsession with mass killings, the case was closed because no one particular ideology was identified. This report says PREVENT should be looking at people like him.
Short term, we have to acknowledge the nature of terrorism has changed. It's harder now to tell whether someone has got a terrorist ideology or something else. And we've got to stop fussing about exactly what's inside their head and put the safety of the people first, including, of course, the person that you're dealing with.
The families of the Southport victims say real change now needs to come in order to prevent what they're facing. They're calling on the government and authorities to ensure they do more than simply pay lip service. At this boxing gym near Telford, they take young people referred by police, social workers and schools. They see troubled, violent teens. Surprised here that PREVENT is only now being told to adapt to the online world.
I think the risk of online radicalisation of young people needs to be taken a lot more seriously. I think young people are no longer feeling safer online. I think it's so much easier to access harmful content. We're seeing a rise of young people accessing that content, accessing communities that are unsafe.
PREVENT also failed to identify the risk posed by the murderer of the MP, Sir David Amess. Ali Harbi Ali murdered Sir David years after being referred to PREVENT, but his case was closed. That was human error. The MP's family are demanding a public inquiry. What this report highlights is that Prevent is failing to detect potentially dangerous individuals in too many cases. And every time someone slips through the net, the consequences can be devastating. In a written statement, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said the report clearly highlights the failings of Prevent in both the Southport case and that of Sir David Amess, whilst also recognising the energy and urgency that has been shown in making changes to strengthen Prevent. That means identifying violent individuals intent on killing, regardless of ideology, to stop atrocities that raise questions over the ability of the state to keep the public safe. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
8 babies have been born in the UK thanks to a groundbreaking IVF technique which uses genetic material from 3 people. The process, developed by a team in Newcastle, is designed to prevent children from being born with devastating mitochondrial diseases which are passed down from their mothers. Our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, has the latest.
Some saw an IVF technique using 3 people to make a baby as unconscionable. Scientists saw a cure for families devastated by inherited disease. Their argument carried, the law was changed and now they report on the result. 8 healthy babies apparently free of mitochondrial disease who began their lives in this Newcastle lab.
It's a great success for these families. You know, this is a devastating disease with no cure, and without this technique, they would not feel that their families were free of mitochondrial disease.
Families like Chloe Russell's, who only learned they were carriers of mitochondrial disease when her brother died suddenly 4 years ago.
To be able to have that as a potential option in the future for me allows me to kind of understand that what happened to my brother will not happen again.
Though both sexes can suffer life-limiting, often fatal disease, only women like Chloe are carriers, as we inherit all our mitochondria from our mothers. Pro-nuclear transfer was designed to fix it. It starts with a fertilised egg from the affected mother, perfectly normal apart from the faulty mitochondria throughout the cell. Then a very thin needle removes the egg's pronuclei, containing the genes from mum and dad that make us who we are. Next comes a fertilised egg from a healthy donor. That's the 3-parent bit, but not really, because those parents' genetic information is removed and replaced with that of the patient's. That leaves a new embryo from the affected parents, but with healthy mitochondria, curing it of disease. Despite the prenatal prodding and poking, the babies, 4 boys and 4 girls, 2 of them identical twins, were born healthy. In 3 of them, some diseased mitochondria were carried over during this process at levels too low to cause disease, but follow-up to monitor their progress will be essential.
And so we have designed a study specifically for that purpose. And I think that's quite right that we want to do that, that families want to do that, and the regulator, the HFEA, want to do that. And that's what is unique, really, about us offering this in Newcastle, because there isn't anywhere else in the world that's doing this in a regulated way.
And that's important. Medicine has entered new territory. A life-saving change to embryos, but for girls, one that will be passed on to their descendants in perpetuity. Disturbing to some, but for 7 new families, and more to come, a lifelong burden lifted. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Sky News has found that online child sex offenders are getting more free support than their family members who are being left to deal with the shame and stigma of their relatives' crimes. Online sex offenders are rarely jailed, which means their families are not classed as victims, leaving them with no access to support. Sky's Katerina Vitozzi has spoken to a convicted online paedophile and his daughter, who was just 13 when her dad was arrested, about the impact of his offending. And a warning, her report contains reference to indecent images of children and suicide, which you may find distressing.
When did you start looking at indecent images of children?
It was probably right around 2013. I just enjoyed looking at it, you know.
What you're about to hear is disturbing. But we wanted to investigate why online child sex offenders get free, automatic help, but their children are entitled to nothing. You'll hear from Ava, who was left with suicidal thoughts due to her dad's offending. But first, from her dad, John. He agreed to speak, to try and stop people from doing what he did and to get help for families. We've changed both their names to protect their identities for fear of reprisals.
I was on the internet on a chat site. Someone sent a link. I opened it and that's what it was. Then more people started sending links and it just kind of gathered pace from there, really. It kind of sucks you in without you even realising it. And it becomes almost like a drug to, get your fix, sort of thing.
After years of offending, in 2019, John was arrested. Police found more than 1,000 indecent images and videos of children on his laptop.
What was that immediate 24 hours like for you after your arrest?
I wanted to kill myself. It was the only way I could see out of the situation.
Now to his daughter Ava. She was just 13 at the time.
When I found out, it genuinely felt like my world was crumbling around me. I couldn't tell anyone. I was so embarrassed of what people might think of me. It sounds so silly, but I was so scared that people would think that I would end up like him as well. I felt like this really big secret that I just had to hold in.
But whereas the police told John about free counselling that he says saved his life, for Ava there was nothing. Children of people arrested for these offences get no automatic support unless families can pay for it privately. It's affecting thousands of children every year and leading to serious mental health issues with children who are more likely to become offenders themselves.
I turned to drugs. I was doing lots of class A's and B's and going out all the time. I guess because it was just a form of escape for a very, very long time. There was a point in my life where I just didn't believe it was going to get better. I really just didn't want to exist. I was just like, if this is what life is like, then why am I here?
We asked the Ministry of Justice about whether these children should be classed as victims and entitled to free help. They told us, we sympathise with the challenges faced by the unsuspecting families of sex offenders and fund a helpline for prisoners' families which provides free and confidential support.
But we've now contacted that helpline and they told us that they can only help these children if and when their parent goes to prison, which for online offences they rarely do. And even then they don't offer a service like counselling. The Ministry of Justice also sent us a list of charities that they said could help. But when we contacted those charities directly, they said they don't offer services to these children.
In some ways we're kind of forgotten about by the services, like you say, it's always about the offender and there isn't really anything for the families.
There may be people watching this who are going through right now what you went through. Yeah. Is there anything you want to sort of say to those teenagers? Why has that question made you cry?
I think because I probably needed to hear this at that point in my life. But I would tell them to stay strong, and it will get easier over time.
Katerina Vertozzi, Sky News.
And if you have been affected by the content of that report, then you can contact the Samaritans at any time on 116123 or email joe@samaritans.org. Now, inflation has risen by more than expected, driven by fuel and food prices. The official figure rose to an 18-month high of 3.6% in June, up from 3.4% in May. Most economists had forecast that inflation would remain largely unchanged. A nurse who complained about a transgender doctor using a female changing room has been cleared of gross misconduct. Sandy Peggy was suspended from work at the Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy last year after being accused of bullying. A major fire has ripped through the main stage at Belgium's Tomorrowland Festival just 48 hours before the world-renowned music event was due to begin. The blaze erupted in the town of Boom, south of Antwerp, where 400,000 fans were expected to gather over the next 2 weekends for one of the biggest electronic dance festivals in the world. Now, after a less than ideal start at the Euros, the Lionesses bounced back in style with big wins over the Netherlands and Wales, taking them into the knockout stages. But Sarina Wiegman's side face a sterner test in tomorrow's quarter-final against Sweden, who are unbeaten in a year. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris reports now from Zurich.
The Lionesses talk about having a home away from home at the Euros, but this is as English as you can find in Zurich. Not that you'd find the players dropping into the Nelson, but it's a pub oozing their tournament mantra.
Proper England. Proper England.
It's inspired their fight back from losing to France to thrashing the Netherlands and Wales, setting up a quarter-final clash with Sweden for the reigning European champions.
England in the past, it was you have to dig out performances and you are maybe the underdog, you're not the favourites. Whereas this England team has developed, football has changed. Obviously, we're a very talented team, a lot of technical ability, tactics, all that comes in the game, but we don't want to ever forget that we are England, we are proper England.
Proper football as a concept has certainly galvanised the team, but how much, though, is it a footballing philosophy or a concept to serve as a rallying cry and to avoid in-depth tactical discussions in public for the Lionesses? Certainly Sweden has been heavily influenced by English football going back to the 19th century. So how much will we see a similar approach here?
We always had the physical part. I feel like the Swedish team has become like a more technical side, you know, and we play a more like intense football.
The Sweden of 2022 lost to England in the Euro semi-final, but now they're unbeaten in a year, sweeping through the group stage with 3 wins, peaking with a 4-1 crushing of Germany. But from a flat start, England feel they're fizzing with confidence.
Cheers.
And all this talk of philosophies is a world away from the experience of the pioneers, the Lionesses who just fought for the right to be an England team, a fight only won in 1972.
Yes! We had snarky remarks thrown at us about you should be at home doing your cooking and cleaning and everything we paid for ourselves, or our parents did. And where it is today now, it's amazing. Yeah, the kids all shouting, oh, well, I'll be 2 and I'm going to be bronze. It's Williamson, you know, they're all such household names now. Things have come on in leaps and bounds, haven't they?
The image of England is one of champions now. 1 win from a 6th semi-final in a row. Proper England defined by perfection. Rob Harris, Sky News, Zurich.
And if England beat Sweden, they will face Italy in the semi-finals. So watch this space. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we will take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the political commentator Adam Bolton and the Daily Mirror columnist Kevin Maguire. Welcome to both of you. And among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front page of The Sun, the headline, Afghan's £1 billion blunder. We will come back with that in just a moment.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Well, hello there. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages for tomorrow. So time to see what's making the headlines then with the political commentator, Adam Bolton, and the Daily Mirror columnist, Kevin Maguire. Lovely to see both of you and welcome. So as ever, to the front pages. Let's kick off, shall we, with The Guardian. It leads on Sir Keir Starmer's suspension of 4 Labour MPs as he cracks down on party rebels who voted against his welfare reforms earlier this month. The Eye writes that the rise in national insurance has hit food prices as the Chancellor takes the blame for the inflation hike. The Telegraph leads on an exclusive story writing that the Home Office tried to stop a secret £7 billion plan to grant asylum to thousands of Afghans because of national security fears. The Daily Mail writes of the potential lawsuits facing the government over the Afghan data disaster. The Times leads on the rising anger at the Ministry of Defence's failure to inform Security Committee of the data leak last June. That story also on the front page of The Sun. Afghans' £1 billion blunder compensation, they write. The Financial Times leads on the news that the chief executive of the world's biggest spirits maker, Diageo, has resigned after 2 years in the job. And meanwhile, the Metro reports on former British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell's bid to review her sex trafficking conviction as the US Department of Justice recommends the Supreme Court denies the bid. And the Daily Mirror writes of reports that former MasterChef star John Turode plans to sue the BBC over his dismissal. So let's talk more. Adam, Kevin are here. A varied selection. We'll come on to the suspension of those MPs shortly. But first of all, taking in the headlines of the Afghan data breach. Kevin, why don't you kick off this idea of compensation now, which The Sun talks about?
That's right, the Mail also. And this is that the 100,000 people on the list that was released could claim compensation because their lives were endangered. Maybe some were lost, we don't know. And the bill is now put at $1 billion, which would be on top of the estimated bill for actually fixing it. Yeah, well, $7 billion in all for the Afghan programme.
A lot, yeah.
$1 billion for the airlift of those who were leaked, although we must remember the actual war itself cost about $40 billion plus. So after that invasion, but it's not, of course, it's just not the end of it. It was just at the beginning. The government kept it secret with the super injunction, but now it is out. All the questions are being asked, including now these figures are guesstimates. A billion. If it's 100,000 people and there could be $1 billion, that's what 100,000 each. I think if you get the noughts and the, I might be wrong, but I think that's about the right figure. That'll be a guesstimate. I suspect it won't be that, but nevertheless, you could imagine compensation claims will come in. People have had their
presumably what the government will want to do is to make an offer initially to avoid going to court because it would be messy and it would drag on. And, well, some of the claimants, of course, were in Afghanistan, so quite difficult.
Yeah, how do you find them and what do you pay them?
Well,
how do you get money?
Some won't know they're on. I would have thought even ambulance-chasing lawyers will find it difficult to trace some of them because you can't just go and knock on a door in Afghanistan now. It's controlled by the Taliban.
But really what's going on now is after this shocking revelation yesterday and the lifting of the super injunction, really a blame game is going on. The problem that a lot of the newspapers that are Conservative sympathetic have is that it was the Conservatives who did all this, and so they're looking for other aspects of it, and clearly one aspect is the compensation, which of course will ultimately be Rachel Reeves's problem. But also, intriguingly, in the Telegraph, their main story is over prominent Conservatives rowing over who supported this deal and who didn't support this deal. Now, Ben Wallace, who was Defence Secretary, said he thought it was absolutely the right thing to do to protect people who help the forces. But we've heard from Suella Braverman and from Michael Gove, and indeed, interestingly, from James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, that they never thought this whole idea of the superinjunction and doing something about it was a good idea. And it's got to the point that Suella Braverman's husband, who had joined Reform UK, remember there's a lot of interest in that, has now resigned because Reform UK had been pointing the finger at her as Home Secretary. And just one other nice touch, we were just talking about this, turns out that the sort of mopping up operation was called Operation Rubific, and we were trying to work out what it meant.
Yeah, even you don't know, Adam, which is something
I do know now, because having Googled it, it means to redden.
OK.
And, you know, this is quite appropriate, because a lot of red faces in the Tory party and also red ink in the Treasury.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the second paragraph of this Telegraph article. The Treasury and the Foreign Office, among several government departments that expressed serious concerns about the scheme, but were overruled after defence ministers used emotional blackmail to force it through, presumably pointing the finger at people like Mercer and Wallace, as you mentioned before.
Well, it's quite interesting in the right-wing papers, including the Daily Telegraph, the Tory Graph and the Daily Mail. If it had happened on Labour's watch, Labour would be prominent in all the headlines, and there's nothing about Tory or Conservative.
And Johnny Mercer's put out a statement saying he wasn't really involved in this at all.
OK.
Not
me, Gulf.
And
although he was fighting to get his own interpretation out of the time.
And Suella Braverman has put out a statement saying that she always thought this was a bad idea.
Does this mean she's now unlikely to defect to Reform? Because Reform, people at the top of Reform thought they'd get her later in the Parliament. But if her hubby's gone, he's
It'd be hard for her to join. Yeah, interesting.
Less slightly.
In the meantime, you mentioned Labour. Let us talk about them now. You know, the wrath, the purge, revenge is sweet, or whatever. So why has Sir Keir Starmer decided to suspend the whip from 4 MPs just before recess?
It's a very good question.
I mean, my theory was the last PMQs, the summer session was so boring, he decided to give us a story.
OK.
But
you're not probably far wrong.
But the Guardian used the Downing Street line, and I think it's true, that he's trying to reassert his authority after 58 MPs, of his own MPs in all, at some point voted against the welfare bill. 58, but he's gone for these 4... what they call persistent rebels.
Yeah, it's not the first time these have rebelled. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've taken away freebie trade jobs from 3 others. But the Guardian is quoting Labour MPs saying, look, he's just created a rift. He's created a problem for himself. And after getting through PMQ as well, the focus is on the last Conservative government. Huge data leak, endangering lives, incredibly expensive secret migration programme being run. Lots of questions on that. Why has he created a diversion? I'm sure the Guardian would have led on Afghanistan if it wasn't for these 4 suspensions.
The only logic that you can work out is obviously there was a big rebellion, 47 voting against the government in the key vote, but actually more at some point had expressed their opposition. You said 58, didn't you? Altogether?
58 in all, yeah. One more than Heinz.
So you then have to say, well, why has he picked out these? And I think as far as I can tell, there are 2 patterns. The 3 of them, Neil Duncan, Jordan, Brian Leishman and Chris Hinchliffe, were all first-time MPs, only elected last year. And I think he clearly wants to send a message out to all those who were only elected last year that it's not a free-for-all. There are consequences. You've got discipline, and they've been quite irritating. The interesting one is... Rachel Maskell's actually been an MP for 34 years.
Yeah, and I'm very upset today. She said, didn't she, I explained there are lines I can't cross because of where I come from in politics with my faith. You know, it's suggesting she was literally standing up for my constituents over the benefit.
Yeah, I actually talking to her earlier this evening, and, you know, she was not angry. She was very sort of more in sorrow than in anger, felt she'd done the right thing, but make it absolutely clear that she wants to come back into the Labour Party, that she's still a member of the Labour member. I said that it was her former party and said, no, it's not, I'm just suspended.
But that's interesting because the Telegraph is saying Sir Keir Starmer has triggered a new split with the left by punishing 7 Labour MPs who voted against his welfare legislation. The other trade envoys, I think, weren't they? Yeah. The Prime Minister stripping them. But the whole point is there's already a bit of a split with those who, like Jeremy Corbyn, etc.
Well, the rift was there. Yeah. It's kind of deepened it, but does he deepen it now in order to recover his own authority and discourage others? That's his calculation. His notional majority was 156. It now goes down to 148 as you lose these 4. But they will be expected to vote with the Labour whip. They're also expected to pay their Parliamentary Labour Party fees. You pay a membership fee, you've got to do that. They're still members of the Labour Party. He's still got 2 other MPs suspended from the 7 that were suspended a few months back, although another one, Zara Sultana, is now going off with Jeremy Corbyn, who's an independent MP.
Sorts of going off with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn didn't...
Well, he seemed not to know, I know. Yeah. That's to form a new party.
But, I mean, you know, for the record, Rachel Maskell, absolutely clear. She's not interested in Corbyn or the Green Party. She wants back into...
Well, she's not in the campaign group of the socialist campaign group of MPs. She's on the left, but she's not...
But it is almost like he does this to them 2 days before recess, so he doesn't have to face them. And some people suggest he's got form for clamping down and, you know, asserting his authority, you know, just before Parliament breaks up. But anyway...
Well, it does hang over them. You know, arguably, it could be a token suspension, and when MPs come back, he lets them back in, and you know, it's a gesture which has no consequences. Rachel Maskell says that she thinks she was singled out, A, because she put down the reasoned amendment, which caused all the trouble. But B, she did, for example, write an article for the New Statesman called How to Organise a Successful Rebellion. So you can understand the whips might have been a bit annoying.
It looked like she was boasting.
Yeah, OK. Stay there, both of you. Lots more still to come, including this in the Financial Times. Brussels pushing for more European-grown produce to be used in Europe's schools. Back in a moment.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age can say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent based here in Bangkok.
We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is
without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Well, you are watching the press preview with me once again, Adam Bolton and Kev Maguire. Welcome back to both of you. Let us go to the front page of the Metro, shall we? The story of Ghislaine Maxwell. This after Donald Trump has been speaking out about those who are demanding the Epstein file, suggesting it's a hoax and, you know, effectively they're losers, even though they're MAGA supporters. But anyway, bring us up to date with this, if you can.
Yeah, he's saying, look, we're not going to release anything. There's nothing to release. Move along, please. Yeah. You can't see anything.
Sordid but dull, was sort of the phraseology.
It's a hoax, but it was his supporters who were putting around, if it was a hoax, putting around, there is a long list, which now the Justice Department says doesn't exist. And meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is in prison because she was the right-hand woman of Jeffrey Epstein, is launching an appeal to get out. Now, of course, just about everyone who goes to prison launches an appeal to get out.
I mean, she's got an appeal, but the argument is going to be she's accused of trafficking girls for prosecution. But since we're now told that didn't happen anyway, how could she? If
there's no client list, who is she trafficking for?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one of the issues, and of course, one of the really interesting things is whether Trump might actually pardon her, because he has said...
he looked very guilty then, wasn't he?
Yeah, he has said in the past that he felt sorry for her and all the rest of it. And, you know, I think his instinct would be he would like to pardon her, but actually the big row about the Epstein files probably makes it much more difficult for him to
I think that's right. And after Elon Musk said, oh, he's done it because he's on the list. Yeah. And then he retracted it. He took it back under extreme pressure and the threat of losing his contracts.
But there are also counter suggestions. I mean, I have no firm factual evidence for this. Counter suggestions in some quarters that if he doesn't pardon her, she's got a list if no one else has.
Yeah.
And that might have
yes.
So where's the missing list? Pam Bondi, who said it was on her desk and now doesn't. And what happened to the footage outside the jail cell where people say are gaps in it? Anyway, we'll watch this space because those who are demanding action on it are not going away, whatever.
I mean, Trump, of course, is saying that the list was made up by Biden and Hillary Clinton, which does rather raise the question, if so, why didn't they use it?
Yeah, well, yeah, but who'd have thought a whole load of conspiracy theorists could fall out? Who could have predicted that?
Let us go to the Financial Times, shall we? Brussels pushes schools to serve up made-in-Europe fruit and vegetables. An idea we should do here, do you think? Anyway.
Well, a lot of people try and buy local, I think.
Yeah.
You know. But it is interesting because there is a big story going on in the European Union, which in times gone by would have been big for us, which is the negotiations over the annual budget to last 7 years for the European Union.
This is when we learn there are benefits for leaving the European Union. We don't have to...
Exactly. who pays what and who gets it. And as ever, the big problem is the farmers, how much the farmers get. Remember the Common Agricultural Policy and France, which always stands up for the farmers. So the suggestion is that they're saying, right, OK, we'll only buy from EU countries for our fruit, and that will provide money going to French farmers who might get a slightly smaller subsidy. Problem is that the people who lose out on this will be client states like Morocco and Turkey, some of whom are very close to France anyway.
And some developing countries, but it makes a no-brainer on environmental grounds as well. You support your local farmers where you can, and then you don't use a load of carbon to bring food, thousands of miles.
Oranges from Spain, isn't it, really? Let's go to the Daily Mirror, shall we? And they say this is an exclusive, and in fact, we were talking about this last night, that will he sue? Was he wrongly shoved out in the fallout of Greg Wallace? This is John Torode. Suggestion here that he plans to sue the BBC over his sacking.
Well, I hope he does, because then we will see exactly what he is said to have said that
well, he can't tell you, because
he claims he doesn't know, but the BBC, in its defence, will have to publish the comment. It'll be in court, so it'll have privilege, so it can all be repeated. And if there are other allegations against him, then we could see those, which he may refute. And then also questions can be asked about what he did when his co-star Greg Wallace was allegedly behaving badly.
Adam, we're running out of time, literally.
Oh, sorry, I went on too far.
Adam Bolton, Kev Maguire, thanks to both of you. Thank you.